Hi everybody, welcome to the QB School. I am JT O'Sullivan. Today we are tackling a question: can quarterbacks make wide receivers better? Fired up, locked in, let's get it going. Welcome to the QB School. So this question comes from Wayne C. Smith. Absolutely fantastic discussion. I don't remember what the discussion was, but I'm glad you dug it. Wayne, thank you so much. Question: what can quarterbacks do to make receivers better? This was a spirited discussion in another group. My take was a lot, and I outlined 4 to 5 things, but it was met with, if a receiver sucks, he sucks, so quarterbacks can't make them better. I respond, good idea for a vid. Boom. So Wayne, excellent question. I'm excited to dive into this one, and really, the answer is probably potentially might be a little underwhelming. I think like many good answers, it depends. Really can see both sides of it. I think there probably is a line where if a receiver, depending on whatever level you're at, simply is not good enough or doesn't have the talent, the raw athletic ability, the strength, the speed, the desire, the, insert any adjective, they're probably not going to be good enough. And that potential window for what that looks like gets smaller and smaller the higher levels you go. So I can see that, and I've unfortunately been around guys like that at probably every level, and it's always the worst when those are the guys that really want to play receiver, and want to be part of the team, and simply just don't have the either strength, athletic ability to get an opportunity, a real opportunity to compete for a spot on the field. You can potentially have them on the team and have a certain role that they can play, but even guys around that don't have the capacity to give quality, scout team looks, it stinks, and it's a bummer for them. It's a bummer that they don't get the experience of doing what they want to do. But that is simply the reality that I've seen a handful of times at honestly every single level. So I think there is a line, whether you want to put quotes around it and say sucks, or just simply doesn't have the capacity to do what that position needs them to do. Now, for the vast majority of people who have the opportunity to play, meaning starter, developer, on the depth chart type guys at wide receiver, I absolutely think that quarterbacks can help them improve significantly. So I'm not sure if these 4 or 5 things were in line with yours. If there are other ones that come to mind, please put them in the comments of the video. I'm certainly interested to find different ways to be able to help develop guys as well. But these are the first couple that came to my mind, and really they're going to go in kind of ascending order of what I consider a difficulty. And so the first one, and this might seem obvious, but I think it's important to state, sometimes some guys just haven't been around American football, and they just need to play catch, and really more catch. And so an easy way for quarterbacks to do this is when you're warming up, just grab a receiver. Now, some of them might think, hey, I'm catching the ball for you. You're a diva, you can't catch your own ball. But really, they need the reps of catching the ball. I think a lot of quarterbacks, myself included, love to think of ourselves as having great hands. And in the reality, we probably don't have great hands as a collective unit. We've just caught more passes because we've played more catch. And so as simple as that, depending on what level you're at, what age group you're at, really all the way through youth to the league, there are guys on rosters that just need to catch the ball more. And not everybody has access to a jugs machine or has the time to have someone go out there and load the jugs machine for them and get those kind of reps. So just playing catch, whether it's in the street, in the yard, at the park, at the tailgate, at practice, before practice, after practice, there are a bunch of opportunities where if you're intentional with playing catch and developing the skills, and I'm not even talking about necessarily teaching how to catch it, just naturally sort it out and let them develop catching the ball with their hands. And so that's the first one that came to mind. The next one, and this is one that I think can go a long way for many people at any level, is kind of the quarterback being really clear with what the expectations are for the wide receiver. And obviously this can be compounded and helped with the wide receiver coach, the offensive staff, the play caller, etc. But I think it's almost better and easier to digest when it comes from a peer. And this is where you start getting into the quarterback leadership influence element of what the position usually entails. And so for me, I love to be able to be really explicit with the wide receivers as a quarterback and say, hey, as an example, and it can really be anything. Now, this operates under a certain level of assumption that the quarterback has a mastery of what the offense is asking them. If they don't, then they're not going to be teaching anybody anything. They need to master it themselves. But once the quarterback has a level of mastery of the offense and can communicate what the expectations are for the wide receiver, I think it helps to hear it from the quarterback. And so I've seen it done a bunch of different ways. I think the easiest way to do it at lower levels is just on the practice field. Hey, this is how we run the slant on this team. This is the split. This is the number of steps, the yardage depth. This is the angle expectation. This is where I expect you to be when you're supposed to be there. Those types of things as far as just clear, explicit expectations for every route. Hey, first bump, I'm going to give you a little bit more time. I still expect you to win inside. If you win over the top, you're not going to get the ball. Those types of things go a long way to helping the wide receiver who's so myopic in their focus, like, hey, I need to win my route, as opposed to necessarily understanding maybe where they are in the progression, where they are versus certain coverage. And that we'll talk about something a little bit later as far as mastering the progressions, but just the idea of the expectations for everything that they're being asked to do. And it's not just running routes. I think another thing that always comes to my mind, especially for wide receivers who quote unquote suck, is if they can get out there and block, they don't suck at that. And so being able to understand who you're blocking, where you're blocking, the screen game, all those types of things go into, I think, helping a wide receiver have more success in developing that wide receiver if they understand the quarterback's expectations, the coach's expectations, the play caller's expectations about what their role is and how critical it is in many elements of the offensive success. And so from there, in that same vein, I think another way that a quarterback can really help a wide receiver is to simplify things. And a play caller can help in the same regard, but sometimes some people just haven't been around a lot of offense, whether it's high quality, low quality, American football, etc. Some people just don't have the capacity to carry 200 plays. Not that you would ever do that besides like an NFL team, but let's just say 50 plays at the high school level. Well, they might not be able to carry 10 different iterations of certain pass concepts. So let's not ask the guy to do that. I'm a big fan of teaching everybody everything. And then as we get into the game, the funnel gets smaller and smaller. And certain guys, to me, fall into certain route guys. So maybe they're blow the top off the coverage. They can run a go, a takeoff, a fly, a 9, whatever, and they can run a slant and a comeback. Well, it doesn't mean that they won't do other things during the game, but those are the things that they're best at. So let's get them doing those things, working those, becoming a master at those things, because that's where their touches are going to come from. We don't need them to work on crossing routes when he's never going to be in the slot, and we're never going to ask him to manipulate that kind of coverage and set routes like that and find grass and settle up. So let's not do that. Let's ask them to just win outside the numbers, win one-on-ones. Those types of things, I think, can really help certain guys who maybe don't have the capacity to carry a number of tools or tricks or are still learning and developing to go a long way to have instant or quicker success. Then the next thing that I love to talk about is just this, especially from the quarterback position, and it can bleed over into this offensive coaching staff, but to really understand what practice is, what the goal of your practice is. And maybe you have a specific goal every practice. I think that's a little nuts, a little unrealistic, but at least in a certain time of year. So for instance, this video is coming out in the spring practice. Let's be really intentional with what that practice is about. We're not preparing for an opponent. Nobody really cares about your spring game, but we are intentionally developing our depth, our perimeter, our wide receiver core, anybody who touches the ball. And so let's intentionally develop that within the practice. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, whether it's warming up, playing catch, routes on air, competing in half line, 7-on-7, team, all those types of things in between special teams periods where you can jump together and go work on certain things. And for me, I always like to be really intentional with that group and say, hey, today the focus is etc., whatever, outbreaking routes, comebacks, glances, whatever your focus is, to spend a little bit of extra time to hone that craft, to be able to be intentional with the development, so that over the course of the entire spring or over the course of the entire camp or summer, you've worked through everything that you're going to be asked to do in a competitive environment. So I think just being intentional in practice towards the development of guys who obviously are above the threshold of not sucking will go a long way to, over the course of a long time, compounding that development into potentially a really good wide receiver quarterback connection. And then finally, the last trick of the trade that I really like is watching film together. Now, not everybody has access to film together, practice film. I get that. Have somebody you know film you out at the field from your phone. Go back and watch it. And the thing to do, and if you have access to better film, whatever, great, use that. But the thing that I think goes a long way to helping wide receivers develop a little bit more of a quarterback perspective, a bigger macro perspective of what's going on offensively, not just saying, hey, I won, being like, OBJ's dad, and being able to say, hey, he's open. Well, what's the progression? What's the timing? What's the quarterback? What's the pass protection? What's all these things tethered together? Not to say that the dude isn't open all the time. He might be open all the time. But a wide receiver can really help himself once he understands that the quarterback it's a timing position. So if I'm supposed to take a 5-step drop on your 12-yard hook, at the top of my drop, let's pause the film and see where you are. So maybe we've got to play, maybe your coach gives you the latitude to play with depths based on speeds of guys. I've been around a lot of guys, myself included, who, depending on who the wide receiver is on a go, I might, have a different landmark. Maybe this guy's a 45-yard go. Maybe he's a 39-yard go. Maybe the quarterback can't take 5 steps. Maybe he needs to take 3 and throw it as far as he can. And so there's some built-in flexibility as far as what the system, what I'm asking you to do. But quarterback wide receiver development, watch the film, pause it at the top of your drop, and see where you are. And it works for routes on air. It's really good versus 7-on-7. It's a great 7-on-7 learning tool. Many people are in 7-on-7 season, or some are 7-on-7. So pause that film at the top and see where you are as a wide receiver and a quarterback. Are you working on time? Or does he understand what window he's working into potentially? Does he see how bump coverage might mess with the timing? Those types of things, as far as, again, that then bleeds into the expectations and the communication. And then you start being able to really evolve to, obviously, you're going to go out, do the routes on air, do the individual work that you two need to do to learn the body language and understanding, syncing and what the timing looks like and all those types of things. But I think pausing film at the top of a quarterback's drop and understanding, hey, I'm the number 1 read. I need to be winning now. Or I'm the number 2 read. I'm the backside read. I have more time to work that in or that dig or that whatever curl on the backside, because I know he's not looking at me. He's going to look at, pause it when he's supposed to look at you. So hitch, reset, whatever, up in the pocket. Now I need to be winning. So those types of things, and those are things that take development. Those are not things that you're going to do, the first week of someone's playing American football at any level. And so just understanding that, I think if the wide receiver is certainly over the threshold of having no chance to play, just simply doesn't have the ability, I think quarterbacks can go a long way to helping the development of just about every wide receiver. Now, that being said, disclaimer, I have certainly been in huddles where I feel like I'm up against it a little bit. And that's just the reality if you play long enough, whether it's whatever league, wherever you are, whatever practice you're in, sometimes you'll be running with a group that, it's not that they can't win, maybe you just don't know them. If you got the ability to go to, high level camps and things like that, but you might get in there sometimes and you're going to have to throw somebody open. So great quarterbacks can have the ability to do that depending on the route concept, but to be consistent with that, it's a really tough task. So hopefully that helped. Wayne, really appreciate the question, the support for the channel. If you have questions like that, I've got a bunch of different ways to get a hold of me, Twitter, in the comments to videos. Again, I always appreciate the commentary, the support for the channel. Thanks so much for hanging to the end. I will see you next time. Have a good one.